NOW Minneapolis, St. Paul. Stay curious, stay connected. Some fog rolling in again tonight and temperatures falling to the mid-30s. That fog will burn off late tomorrow morning, kind of like it did today, and then partly sunny skies expected in the metro. High temperatures tomorrow in the mid-50s.
Support for NPR.
I'm Catherine Richer. You're listening to NPR News. Here's an idea. Americans should protest with their dollars. That's the idea behind the new Resist and Unsubscribe movement. It's the name of a national boycott that targets major tech companies. Think unsubscribing to Amazon, deleting apps, all in response to federal immigration operations. One of my guests tonight is Pivot Podcast's host, Kara Swisher, who can tell you all about it. She helped launch the movement with her co-host, Scott Galloway. They'll be in Minneapolis this Sunday, but in the meantime, we will get a little preview. We'll be talking about what this new call for action is, what it means, and what it can really accomplish. You can join our conversation at 651-227-6000.
I'm Rylan Barton. President Trump continues to try and explain why the U.S. took action against Iran when it did. NPR's Franco Ordonez reports on the various explanations Trump has given for going to war.
President Trump again reiterated the long threat posed by the Iranian regime. At a roundtable discussion at the White House, Trump boasted of U.S. military power. He said the U.S. obliterated Iran's nuclear program, but also said Tehran was trying to reconstitute the program and was close to having a nuclear weapon. And he said the U.S. needed to act before Iran did.
And I think if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and give us a shot if that was possible.
The White House argues the U.S. didn't make the decision in a vacuum, and that its decision to launch this operation was based on what it calls the cumulative effect of various direct threats. Franco Ordonez, NPR News, the White House.
The last two names of the 6 U.S. soldiers killed in an attack in Kuwait have been released by the Pentagon, and they're from California and Iowa. The soldiers identified were Chief Warrant Officer 3 Robert Marsden of Sacramento and Major Jeffrey O'Brien from Indianola, Iowa. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was back on Capitol Hill today, this time testifying before the House Judiciary Committee. NPR's Jimena Bustillo has more.
The committee's ranking member, Democrat Jamie Raskin, was one of several who pressed Secretary Noem over her labeling of 2 citizens killed as, quote, domestic terrorists after their deaths.
What happened in Minnesota in those 2 incidents was an absolute tragedy.
Were they domestic terrorists, as you said to the country?
My condolences to their families, because I know that their lives will never be the same.
There was a large split between Republicans and Democrats over whether immigration enforcement tactics have gone too far. Meanwhile, lawmakers are still trying to negotiate a deal to fund Noem's department. DHS is in the 3rd week of a shutdown, meaning hundreds of thousands of federal workers are working without pay or furloughed. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, Washington.
The Trump administration plans to move the Energy Star efficiency program to the Department of Energy. NPR's Jeff Brady reports the change comes after the administration tried to eliminate the program.
Energy Star awards its blue and white logo to the most efficient appliances in buildings. The Environmental Protection Agency has operated the program for more than 3 decades. The Trump administration effort to end or privatize the program failed. Congress specifically instructed that the EPA spend just over $33 million this year on Energy Star. But now the EPA has signed an agreement to transfer responsibility to the Energy Department. The U.S. Green Building Council says EPA has been very successful in creating and managing Energy Star and is concerned about the administration abruptly moving the program after Congress showed bipartisan support for it. Jeff Brady, NPR News.
The U.S. stock market rebounded today. This is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the maxim that helping someone else less fortunate is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org. This is NPR.
For NPR News in the Twin Cities, I'm Elena C. Some Democratic lawmakers want to do more to protect the personal data of consumers. 2 bills to do just that were discussed today. Kate Kelly reports.
A Consumer Reports investigation found companies like Kroger have used consumer data to determine the maximum price someone will pay and then charge people different prices online. 2 new bills would prevent companies in Minnesota from using data like browsing history or financial circumstances to tailor prices or wages. Democratic Representative Lee Finke says Minnesota should get out ahead of this technology.
Once these new technologies are in place, we never catch them, right? We're seeing that with crypto. We're seeing that with AI. We see that with drones. Pick your technology. We're told it's not happening. We don't end up regulating it. And then we spend 10 years trying to catch up to technology that is out of control.
Republicans say the bills need work to avoid unintended consequences. I'm Kate Kelly at the Capitol.
After a funding proposal for renovations to Grand Casino Arena failed to gain traction at the legislature last year, the Minnesota Wild and the city of St. Paul yesterday announced a new plan for the project. Annika Best has more.
St. Paul Mayor Kali Herr and the Minnesota Wild are proposing $600 million in renovations to the 25-year-old arena and adjacent public buildings. That plan includes a request for $200 million in state funding. It's not clear whether lawmakers will support that. The remaining $400 million will be financed by the city and the Wild. The team agrees to cover any overrun costs. The plan calls for 3/4 of the money to go towards arena renovations, with the remainder going toward improvements at the St. Paul River Center and Roy Wilkins Auditorium. I'm Annika Best.
College football coach Lou Holtz has died at the age of 89. While best known for his tenure and national title at Notre Dame, Holtz coached the Minnesota Gophers for a couple of seasons in the mid-1980s. He inherited a struggling Minnesota program and coached it to a winning record before he left for Notre Dame. This is NPR News.
This hour on NPR News is supported by Alight and Northwest Minnesota Foundation, organizations committed to the people and communities of Minnesota. Their support helps make space for respectful conversation, shared understanding, and connection at a moment when many are seeking clarity and perspective. Now, let's begin.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Richer. You're listening to NPR News. It's been a few months since President Donald Trump started his immigration crackdown here in Minnesota. There has been violence. There's been protests. People have been living in fear of being detained and deported, and 2 U.S. citizens were fatally shot by federal agents. Many Minnesotans have been wondering what they can do. So tonight, we're going to explore the question of what happens when Americans protest with their dollars. There's a new call for action called Resist and Unsubscribe. The idea is that bailing on services like Amazon, deleting certain apps can affect ICE operations here and around the country. But how does it all work? Has it been effective so far? And do boycotts actually lead to change? We'll be talking all about it with our guests tonight. A little bit later, Kara Swisher, who's co-host of Pivot. That's a podcast that explores the biggest stories in tech, business, and politics, will be joining us. She helped launch the Resist and Unsubscribe movement with her co-host Scott Galloway. She's also the host of On with Kara Swisher, editor-at-large at New York Magazine, and a CNN contributor. She'll be taking your calls a little bit later. We want to know if you've participated in boycotts before, what's been your experience, and if you're a fan of Pivot and have already heard about the Resist and Unsubscribe movement, have you canceled a subscription lately? And if you have, what do you hope to accomplish? Give us a call at 651-227-6000, 800-242-2828. Or if you are watching us on YouTube or Facebook, you can leave your questions or comments in the chat. But before Kara joins us, I want to take some time to talk with Christopher Wong-Michelson. He is a professor of business ethics at St. Thomas, and he's on the Business and Society faculty at New York University's Stern School of Business, where he's taught professional responsibility and corporate governance since 2005. Christopher, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Catherine, thanks for having me.
So, I think I certainly have been long enough, watching the news long enough to know that consumer boycotts kind of have a mixed record historically. What do we know about what determines a successful one, and what do we mean by success?
It's a great question, and I don't think that we know a lot about what determines whether a boycott is going to be successful. If you mean by successful that you've decrease the market capitalization of the Target Corporation. By the way, I mean Target with a lowercase t in this case.
Not the corporation that every Minnesotan spends, an inordinate amount of time in.
That has also been the subject of boycott activity, yes.
Right.
But if the goal is to reduce market cap, that's very difficult to measure. Now, there is a market cap measurement tool on the Resist and Unsubscribe website that claims that to date, something like $266 million of market cap has been lost among several technology companies since the movement began. And that's a lot of money. But it's also a rounding error for the kinds of companies that we're talking about. Apple's market cap is almost $4 trillion. Amazon's is over $2 trillion. So from that perspective, even though a lot of market cap has been lost, that probably isn't the ultimate direct benefit of this kind of boycott activity. Ideally, what a boycott can also do, and this is more difficult to measure but maybe more tangible to understand, is just draw attention to an issue. Draw attention to the fact that these big tech companies are in very close relationships with the government to the point that it's almost harming competitive activity in the industry, and also maybe giving tech billionaires and the concentration of power in the executive branch too much say in our lives. And so drawing attention to that issue is important. Ultimately, I think what success would look like would be a change in practices. And what that means in this case, maybe we'll get into a little bit later.
Yeah, Nike is often held up as sort of one of those success stories. Consumers pushed back on sweatshop labor. The industry actually changed. We also more recently saw a Target. Now we are talking about the store, Target, boycott in response to the company's decision to roll back its DEI initiatives. How do we know if maybe some of the policy changes that were made within these organizations were due to the boycott, or really was it other factors?
I think we can learn a lot from the Nike example. So this occurred in the 1990s, and there was a lot of concern, especially from the political left, about treatment of sweatshop workers in Southeast Asia who were making Nike shoes for pennies on the dollar for what they were actually costing the consumer. And initially, Nike's response to the concerns was to say, these are actually not our manufacturing facilities. They are contract manufacturers. They're not our employees. We don't have a say in what they earn. We don't have a say in the working conditions and so on. Michael Jordan, who was the most famous athlete that endorsed Nike products at the time, was once asked what he thought of the sweatshop conditions. And he famously quipped, and he maintains today it was a joke, but he said, Republicans buy sneakers too. So he essentially declined to take a position as the company had. And the data really are inconclusive from way back then, whether there was actually any economic adverse impact to Nike's performance. But as you suggested, it led to increased awareness about the issue and a change in practice. So Nike eventually said, we are the economic behemoth in this supply chain, and we do have the power to actually audit the factories that we work with and make sure that the health and safety of the workers is sound, that there's no child labor or forced labor. And Nike eventually became a leader in supply chain sustainability. So in that case, I think it was ultimately successful. With regard to Target Corporation with a capital T today, I think it's probably still too early to tell exactly what the impact of boycott activity is going to be. First of all, it's come from both sides of the political spectrum. So you referenced DEI activity. There was also a kerfuffle about Pride merchandise being sold in stores.
Yeah.
And conservative activists boycotted Target because of the Pride merchandise. And when Target seemed to capitulate to them, then progressive activists counter-boycotted. I grew up in Minnesota. We shopped at Target every week. And there was a sense of hometown pride in this company. I think a lot of people had love for Target. And one thing that Target's had trouble with is it probably can't be loved by some without being loathed by some. And by not taking a side on some of these issues or flip-flopping, being seen to be going back and forth, it's cultivated maybe a lukewarm attitude toward its corporate stands. And maybe lukewarm is exactly where nobody wants to be, because it's better to have some consumers that love you and are loyal to you than for everybody just to be lukewarm about you.
Lukewarm is not good for your brand, is what you're saying.
Not at all.
Here.
I mean,
yeah.
Target's
Target's
known for being historically fashion forward and also maybe socially forward. And now it's sort of in this no person's land.
Yeah, that's interesting. Before we wrap up our conversation here, Chris, I just want to ask you a bigger question, which is, I just think a lot of people are feeling pretty helpless as they watch tech in particular consolidate consumer, economic power, dominate our lives. It feels like impossible to not use it. And the administration seems to be pretty cozy with this particular industry. How can this feeling maybe of disenfranchisement fuel consumer boycotts like the ones we're seeing?
Well, I think that Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway have come up with a great idea, as you put it, to protest with your dollars by resisting and unsubscribing from these companies. That said, it's not a new idea. It's just a bigger idea than a very old idea. The very old idea is that you shop at places and use products from places that treat you well. And if we feel mistreated by big tech, then we are taking our dollars elsewhere. That said, I compared the market cap impact that resist and unsubscribe has had to the market cap of these companies, and it's not that significant. But it might make us feel like we're making a small difference, like we're voting with our dollars. What I would suggest is that we should vote with our dollars. That's just a form of conscious capitalism, but we should also vote with our votes if we're concerned about the relationship between government and these companies.
Yeah, and I think too, Christopher, before I let you go, one thing that's been so interesting for me is to hear, I have friends who have participated in this, and they've talked about, really just rethinking how they buy stuff in general and where they buy stuff in general. So, this might be a small sliver of the market, the amount of money that these companies are really, managing every day. But it sort of re-empowers buyers to rethink how they spend their money in general. And that could lead to something bigger.
Just as we expect our corporations to operate responsibly, we should be responsible consumers who give some thought to where we buy and why we buy what we buy. That said, it's not hard to imagine a world in which some stores are frequented only by Democrats and others only by Republicans. Some social media platforms are aligned with one party and others with another party. And in the long term, that's not a world that I want to live in. So I hope that the impact of resist and unsubscribe, even though it is a political movement, is to sort of depoliticize our businesses. We should ultimately be participating in an economy in which some businesses are liked better than others because of the way they do business, how they treat people, the quality and value of their products and services.
Well, Christopher, thank you so much for being with us. That was Christopher Wong Michelson. He's a professor of business ethics at St. Thomas, who also teaches at New York University's Stern School of Business. And now I want to bring in Kara Swisher. As I mentioned, she is the co-host of Pivot. That's a podcast that explores the biggest stories in tech, business, and politics. She and her co-host, Scott Galloway, launched the Resist and Unsubscribe movement that we're talking about tonight in direct response to ICE enforcement in the Twin Cities here and throughout Minnesota. Kara, it's so great to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry Scott's not here. Who knows what he's doing?
He's somewhere out there. And
not here.
as a reminder to everyone, not here.
No,
as
he's
a
in
reminder,
London.
Kara
It's
will be
late.
taking. He's in London. Oh, so it's the middle of the night. We can't wake him up, right? That would be terrible. Okay. Just want to remind our audience here that Kara is going to be taking your calls tonight, and we want to know if you've participated in boycotts before. If so, what was your experience like? If you're a fan of Pivot and you've already heard about the resist and unsubscribe movement, have you canceled a subscription already? And if you have, what do you hope to accomplish? You can call us at 651-227-6000 or 800-242-2828. Or if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, you can just leave your questions and comments in the chat and I'll bring them into the conversation. Okay, Kara, you are coming to Minneapolis this weekend. You'll be doing a live event with Scott at the Pantages. That's right. And on Sunday, it sold out really fast. And I'm sure people in our audience are like, dang, I won't be able to go. But why are you coming and what can people expect?
Well, it started out as we've been talking about resist and unsubscribe on the show. This is Scott's brainchild, essentially. And one of the things he did, he sort of just did it on his own, right? He didn't join a group of people. We've been on calls where people wanted to do different boycott things and they always ended up being these very long calls and Scott doesn't have the tolerance for them. I mean, it's just one of his bad traits. And he just suddenly mentioned this resist and unsubscribe thing. And then that night he kept sending me things and he put it up. That's what he's like as an entrepreneur, as a person. And so I'm trying to be supportive of him and talk about things he could do. And I give him suggestions and it's really Scott's thing. But he kept talking about it. He seemed enthusiastic. And I have 4 kids and I'm like, oh, my kid gets interested in karate. I'm going to go all in with him, and or whatever they happen to be. And he had that enthusiasm. And so he just said, he just said it on the air, where you should do a live event. And I was like, yeah, we should do a live event. And we were like, where? And he goes, Minnesota. Immediately we saw it, Minneapolis, because we talked a lot about what's been happening there, the tragedies and the resistance. And so we felt like it was the best place to do it. And we went on a pivot tour this fall. We may indeed come to Minnesota again in the fall. We're having a poll right now for people to pick where we should go. But we thought we missed Minnesota. Yeah, we missed Minneapolis in that tour. And we thought, let's do this. And then we did it. Then we just I called Tane Danger, who I knew from doing several events in Minnesota for my book. And I interviewed your Senator Smith. And so I just did it. We just did it. I don't know. We're like that. Yeah. We just decided. It came together really quickly.
Well, Tane is very much a friend of NPR and public media in Minnesota.
He's great.
Everyone knows Tane. He's wonderful.
Yeah. I'm not going to say what we say it sounds like, but we make jokes about his name on the show. I mean, can I say that on NPR? We make jokes that it's a porn star name.
If you think you can't, you shouldn't. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I just did. Well, I don't care.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. You don't live here. Tane Danger.
No.
Scott doesn't live here. You don't live here. But you've been watching this play out over the last 2 months. You're obviously paying very close attention. What have you noticed, and what do you kind of make of Minnesota's response?
Oh, we think it's amazing. It's such a blueprint for the rest of the country, which is like this shall not stand. And you saw just, yesterday in Congress, the senators attacking Kristi Noem for her behavior in Minnesota. And really, Republican and Democratic say these things tend to catch on when someone's courageous. Other people get courageous, right? It really does. People sort of wait to see who will act. And I think the way Minnesota did this was with incredible dignity, with incredible resistance, and at the same time maintain what is good about your state. Every state is different, right, in the way they respond to things. But it seemed to be, and then all your public officials have been very outspoken, which is great, but not in a way that isn't reasonable, right? What are you doing here? Why are you doing this? This is unfair. Just appealing to the basic instincts of America, in the good part of America, which is, this isn't fair. This isn't right. Not like this. What are you doing? This seems like politically motivated. And also you're incompetent, right? And this incompetence and lack of training leads to tragedy. And so it's been a real inspiration, I think, for people across the country. There's an expression, this far and no further. And that's what it felt like. This far and no more. You can't do this anymore. And so it was inspiring to Scott and I.
Well, I think if people are just tuning in and maybe are not familiar with resist and unsubscribe, Give us your elevator speech. Like, what do people actually have to do?
Well,
What
this
does
is
it entail?
Scott's thing. So I'm his supporter. I support him immediately.
You're
and
his
a lot
proxy
of people,
tonight. Yes.
I'm his proxy. Yes. A lot of people, when he initially did it, texted me. A lot of real smart people, especially in the activist community. And they're like, he's so dumb. He did it, by himself. He should have done it with a thing. It's just, he didn't. Right. And I think it's been more effective than a lot of them, honestly. And so I've been a big supporter the whole time at the beginning. And I was like, okay, if you're going to do it this way, I thought eventually he had to do it with more people, that it doesn't really work if to sustain something like this by yourself, just like in Minnesota.
Right,
One person stands
you have
up.
to get a lot of interest.
Yes,
You have to, it
it's
has
kind
to
of
last a
stone
long
soup.
time, right?
I think of it like stone soup, right? That's what it is. It's a version of stone soup, which is a famous kids story. And I assume people know what stone soup is. Anyway, look it up if you don't. And so, or buy it. It's a great book. And so what it is essentially is there's lots of ways to handle a lot of this ridiculous behavior from the Trump administration. Protesting is amazing and important at the heart of it. Voting, of course, voting is the most important. Make sure you vote, get out there and vote. It's your greatest privilege as an American citizen, and it's your greatest duty, by the way. I really do underscore that. With my kids, I'm like, if you don't vote, I'm not paying for college. Like, I'm sorry, you have to vote. Voting
Well, that's a
is
good
privilege.
incentive. Yeah.
Well, they do anyway. I made it sure they understood that it was a privilege and an honor and a duty, all three things at once. Yeah. And so I think that's the most important thing, obviously. But there's lots of ways to handle this, right? You don't have to if you don't feel like protesting, if you don't want to make a sign, if you don't want to call your congressman, there's all kinds of ways you can get on and do, hashtagism on social media. I think that's the least effective one, but it's still something. It's still something. And so we thought, look, one of the ways you can do it, and of course, boycotts absolutely take forever, and it takes a while. And I was really I was very much inspired when I was a young kid with the Anita Bryant issue around orange juice, and all the gay bars stopped having orange juice, right? And like from what she was pushing. And I remember thinking, oh, they did something, right? They said, we're going to do, and it was a small thing, but it tends to have ripple effects, right? It gives people a little hope. And you want to give people our whole concept behind this is, we know we're not going to put a dent into Apple's market cap. We're aware. But actually, you'd be surprised what it does to the stock, right? And we made an example. I figured it was Comcast or one of them. They dropped 30,000 subscribers. Their stock went off $6 billion. That's all it took. It only took 30,000. This wasn't resist and unsubscribe. It was just a problem they were having with their subscribers. And you can, if just 5,000, 6,000 people do it, it has an impact on the stock itself, not the market valuation. And the market valuation, of course, is linked to the stock. But it does have an impact with a smaller amount of people. Two, you can decide where you want to spend your money and have really good conversations about that. That's one of the things we wanted to spur. I had an interesting conversation with my kids about Apple Music. My son loves Apple Music. He's like, do we have to? I'm like, okay, but I just want to know what they're doing. I want you to know what they're doing. We also want to have people make good choices for themselves. We're not like, Scott's has a bit of too much of an anti-woke bent for my taste, but nonetheless, that's fine. We don't want to lecture people. We don't want to lecture people how to live, right? We both feel that way. Mm-hmm. So here's some choices. Here's the list of the things they're doing. We're not going to stack rank them for you. We're just telling you. They gave $20 million to that idiotic ballroom. They did this to the inaugural. By the way, they all give to every inaugural. If you want to be fair there. They showed up at this dinner thing. They did this thing, they paid off Trump on the ABC, whatever it happens to be. Here's what they did, what we find offensive or we don't like, or just here's the facts. Then you decide. If you're okay, if your kids love, I don't think Disney's on this list, but say Disney was on the list, I couldn't get rid of Disney right now. I have a 4- and 6-year-old. I think they would riot, right?
Yeah, good luck with
that. And so,
yeah.
Right, but you have to think about it. Like, it requires you to think about where your money's going. And in a lot of ways, you don't even realize where you're spending all this money. And so it's little things. I've saved $700-800 like a month. I was like, oh, I didn't know I was doing this, right? I had signed up for a bunch of streaming services. I had all these services on Apple I didn't realize. I had one medical. I haven't been there since I had an ear infection 3 years ago. Like, that's also like a good economic, like, why am I paying this asshole, right? And you can, and then we wanted to also give people choices to go. Here's, if you want to get off Spotify due to this and this, here's an alternative. You can, it reminds me, and then I'll stop ranting, is the idea, we know it doesn't have a thing, but it has an effect on you. It has an effect on how you spend your money and where you choose to decide to do business, which people have done for a long time, but it focuses you on it in a way that makes you feel better. Like, I'm doing a little thing. And I think it does. I think mentally it makes people think about their relationship with tech, which is bad. FYI, you're all like willing supplicants to these tech companies, and they don't care about you. So we're telling you that, like, they don't care. They will do everything for themselves. They will do chatbots that hurt kids. They will do privacy violations. They will make teen girls. We've talked about this on the podcast a lot. So we're going to give you a tool. Okay. Look, you're not going to necessarily get on Facebook, but as long as you're not paying them, stop paying them, right? That's our whole thing. Yeah. You can take their free Google services, but don't pay ChatGPT for running into that Defense Department contract when Anthropic.
Well, I want to talk to you more. I want to talk to you more about that in just a few minutes here. But I want to stay on the resist and unsubscribe for a minute. I'm on your website right now, and you sort of have things in two. It's got two buckets. Scott's divided them into two buckets. We have the ground zero, and these are subscriptions that probably everyone has some combination of that you say have an outsized influence over the national economy and the president. That includes Amazon, Google, Apple, and then there's like the blast zone, and these are these consumer-facing companies that Scott's identified as being enablers of ICE, AT&T, Comcast, FedEx, Lowe's. And so I think what you were saying earlier is like the president may not always pay attention to public opinion, but he certainly pays attention to the stock markets, right?
And he does, exactly.
And so
it hits him.
Are you convinced that the president would, in fact, change policies if he really starts to see a dent in some of the stocks, associated with these companies?
But listen, he is a coin-operated president, and therefore that's what he'll do, right? He'll do something. It doesn't seem like it. He's sort of flailing around right now in all manner of ways. But money matters to this guy. Of all the many things, that he does, money matters. That's one of the sort of the bearing wall of this presidency, right? And corruption matters. And so one of the things we want to say is, all right, you want to like push these people around? We can push them around too, right? We can also, and it will affect you. And eventually, I was in an interesting meeting today with a pretty top Republican senator, and he was apoplectic. I can't say what it was because it was off the record, but he was apoplectic about the Anthropic situation, and apoplectic about the U.S. investing in Intel and stuff like that, and these companies going along with it. He was a businessman, and he's like, they don't get to say what a business does, right? And so, again, it's like going to I don't know if you've ever been to a shareholder meeting ever in your life. There's always someone who gets up, an activist, and starts yelling. And it's great. I love it. I love when the CEO has to answer for it. And so one of the things, and it's a small person, and it isn't going to affect the vote, but it was said, and they heard it, right? And that's when I will tell you, these tech companies call me all the time about the Scott thing. They're like, "Can you get them to back off?" I'm like, "No, I can't."
Well,
in fact,
I was going to ask you. So what? I mean, what are they telling you? Like, put a leash on the guy, or what?
Yeah, put a leash on him. Yeah, and I'm like, as if I'm the bad cop. He's the good cop. What are you talking about? I'm like,
but clearly they're worried, right?
They are. They don't like.
They're concerned.
And also bringing public attention to it is also part of it, right? And that does affect them. Like Target definitely misstepped on the DEI stuff, and it's affected them. How big? Enough. The CEO left, right? Like, these things can have repercussions over time. I think Sam Altman's in a bit of a bind right now, and he should be because of the way he's behaved. And so largely he needs to stop talking. I mean, actually, but one of the things that you can do is make them think twice, right? And that's the kind of thing. But more to the point, it's not so much, there is impact. I don't agree with your previous caller. There is impact because it makes them think. It makes them realize who the real person is, which is the customer. And it makes people think about where they're spending their money. You should do that. We kind of blindly go into our relationship with tech. They hand us like a map, which, by the way, the U.S. government paid for those maps, and then they sell it back to us. stuff we paid for as taxpayers. It's crazy. By the way, guess who paid for the internet? The American taxpayer. Like, sorry. And then they got to take advantage of it. So it just gets you in the mode of who's in charge here, right? Who's actually in charge? And then it might motivate you to vote more. It might motivate you to take all kinds of action. And I think that's always a good thing. An aware public is a better public. I mean, a voting public is a much better voting public.
Yeah. If you're just joining our conversation, we're talking tonight with Kara Swisher. She is the co-host of Pivot. That's a podcast that explores some of the biggest stories in tech, business, and politics. We've been talking about the resist and unsubscribe movement. This is the idea that if you unsubscribe to services like Amazon or Google, you're going to have an impact.
The paid ones.
And sorry, Amazon Prime.
ChatGPT
Yes, Amazon
paid $20 a month, that kind of stuff. By the way, that's growing. That movement is growing. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I just want to remind the audience of our number here. It's 651-227-6000 or 800-242-2828. You can also leave your comments online if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook. You can just leave your comments in the chat there. We have Mary in Mapleton on the line. Mary, what do you want to share with us?
Hi. So for 3 years now, I have been having this love-hate relationship with Starlink. We don't live in the town. We live rurally, and our service, it is great service. But for 3 years, I'm like, I hate Elon Musk. Like, but it is a great service, and literally I just every month want to vomit, but can't. And if there is another option that Kara Swisher has, let me know. Like, I'm all in.
Yeah, Kara, what should she do?
Starlink is a great service. It really is. That's the problem with Elon Musk is, not the Cybertruck. That was not so good. But Starlink is a real thing. I remember when he was thinking of doing it and talking to me about it. And I thought, nobody's doing that. Why? And it was a real risk for him to take at the time. And the person running that company is a woman named Gwynne Shotwell, who should get much more of the credit. Elon sucks up all the oxygen in the room, but Gwynne is this amazing CEO of it. And it's part of SpaceX. And it's about to go public, which will make him richer than ever. But one of the things that's hard is some of these products are necessary, right? And that's a problem. In this case, I do have to say, Elon did something nobody else did and took a big risk, and he deserves to benefit from it. This is a product that really didn't exist, that he brought into being. There has to be competition, right? That's the problem, is you don't have a choice. As much as you didn't when there was just one cable. This is something Americans have had to unfortunately deal with. One cable company in a market, only one choice of a supermarket, right? Only one where prices could be manipulated by these supermarket chains. This is a real problem across the spectrum. And by the way, your own Senator Klobuchar wrote a book about antitrust and monopolization of things. And that's excellent. It's so big you could kill a small puppy if you threw it the wrong place. But it's this astonishing book about the history of antitrust. And I think that's the problem, is what happens. You get these dominant people that have a very good product. By the way, cable was abusive to customers and they had the monopoly. In this case, Starlink's a great product. And you can't deny it, as much as I know I've shared your feelings about Elon many times, but and especially to watch this decline in a person is really disturbing on many levels. But that's the problem. You don't have a choice. And there should be, our government should be pushing for competition again for Starlink. And it's, by the way, it's better for Starlink not to settle into like this sort of like chicken fat on soup, essentially, where they don't do anything. Right. And that's what will happen to them. There will be competition, but there isn't right now.
Kara,
I'm sorry to tell you.
And Kara, I will say the first time I saw a Starlink up in the sky, I was like, is this the alien abduction? I had no idea what it was. I was sitting on my deck, looked up. It was wild.
Yeah. You probably can see it up there.
They're cool.
You can't see it in the city. Let me say, you know who's doing a version of competition to them? Is Jeff Bezos through Kuiper. I think it's called Kuiper. Jeff Bezos is. Okay. So that's which one do you want to pick? Pick your poison, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. Okay, we have JJ in Minneapolis on the line. JJ, what do you want to share with us?
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Are you there? Go ahead. We can. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I would love to be able to boycott and unplug and so forth more than I can. because I'm a senior on a limited income, and I can't afford to not shop at Target. And the only streaming service I have is Amazon, because it's like $6.50 a month. You get a half off discount as a person who's on MA or SNAP, which is oddly progressive for a Bezos-owned business that's not well advertised. And I find it like sort of philosophically frustrating that so much of this kind of action is geared towards more prosperous people.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
Kara, is this? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, would you like me? I mean, this is
I was
the
just going to
problem,
say, do you want to respond to?
So much of our wealth is now concentrated in a small amount of people. It's really quite disturbing on every level. I find it to be, and it's something I've talked about a lot. I'm like, do we want this small group of homogeneous people to be running everything? Right? That's the issue that we have before us. Is that it's really quite disturbing how money is. I'm trying to find this one statistic that was in a story I saw today, where like the amount of money these billionaires have been. Here we go. The richest Americans have amassed enormous wealth in recent years, while most Americans have seen theirs stagnate. The net worth of the top 0.1% doubled from 2020 to a collective sum of $24.9 trillion in the third quarter of 2025. Doubled. And now accounts for 14.4% of the total household wealth, according to the Federal Reserve. The rich get richer. That's really what it was. And but don't get just rich. They get obscenely rich. And so they don't. If we don't have proper antitrust laws, we haven't had a new antitrust law forever. It's like 100 years. Again, Senator Klobuchar has been trying to pass it, and she keeps getting knocked down by the tech industry all the time, whether it's on privacy or antitrust or reform or anything like that. So because the tech industry has no rules governing it whatsoever compared to other industries. And so we haven't had updated antitrust. We aren't promoting the competition we need to. And right now, the Trump administration's all administrations have their problems about being in the pocket of corporations, but boy, is this one. That we have an FCC chairperson, Brendan Carr, who is a lapdog. I've never seen such a lapdog in my life. And all he does is back whatever Trump wants and whatever these corporations want. And then he attacks those who are against it. He's also a moron, but that's a different story. But one of the issues you have here is you don't have choice, right? You don't get good choice. And I've always felt like the internet should be free for everyone, just like plain old POTS, plain old telephone service, because it's really good for innovation. It's really good for everybody to be on the internet for free. That should have always been free. We have the most expensive telecom and internet providers in the world, and we're the most expensive, and we have the least service. Like we're down near like I wouldn't say Latvia. It's great in Latvia, but other way down in really poor countries, and us, the United States, in terms of service that we get in that regard. And we've been slow, and so that should have been something the government should have leaned into, right? More competition for all these companies is necessary. And that's why you should worry, for example, about media consolidation or about tech companies consolidating the media, which is actually what's happening on top of that.
Yeah. And, I do just want to point out to listeners like JJ too, Kara, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard you and Scott talk about that you can unsubscribe to some things. You don't have to do like all of them. You can be
you don't.
There are various levels of participation. Yeah. Exactly.
I still have Apple Music. My kids aren't willing to do it, and I'm not going to make them. They're the ones that use it. So
I joy to our lives. I mean,
I know. You know what? I make the point to them. This is what you're supporting. If you feel comfortable doing that, go right ahead.
Yeah.
I will support you. Yeah. I don't want to. And then I say that, and I treat them like adults, and they can make their adult decision for all these things. And again, by the way, you can stop using Amazon Prime for a short time and then go back to it. That's great if they start to behave in ways you like. And by the way, they're going to be made to if this midterms goes the way most people think it will, because they're going to all be there. There's going to be a congressional hearing where they sit down and say, can we see the emails about the money for the ballroom? Can we see what they made you do? Can we see that? That's all within a subpoena power. And then they'll shift rather quickly, I would suspect.
Yeah. Just a reminder to our audience, we're talking with Kara Swisher tonight. She's the co-host of Pivot. That's a podcast that explores tech, business, and politics. You can call in and share your experiences with the resist and unsubscribe movement. If you've canceled a subscription in response to ICE enforcement in Minnesota or elsewhere, we want to hear about it. Give us a call at 651-227-6000 or 800-242-2828. We're also live streaming on YouTube, Facebook. You can leave your questions or comments there. Kara, you mentioned earlier the Anthropic deal with the Pentagon, and I just want to give our audience like a little primer on what this is all about. This is the fallout between Anthropic and the Pentagon, and basically they were in contract talks. They fell apart over questions about how AI would be used in our defense.
Yeah, they have a $200 million contract, and they
yeah,
wanted,
but there was conflict
the Pentagon
over.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So why should people be paying attention to this story? I mean, I feel like it was big news in the tech world, right? But like, why would the average American?
Big news for everybody because we don't live in Russia. I believe we live in the United States of America. This is a Putin move. This is a Putin move by the government. Anthropic wants certain strictures. They don't want to surveil Americans, and they don't want to have drones that just do what they want. Essentially, autonomous weapon systems. It's a big issue that autonomous weapon systems decide things. Let me tell you, when they were doing tests on a lot of this stuff, most of the AI bots said, let's do nuclear war. It seems to make most sense to stop this thing. Like we want humans to be in the figuring of where we should bomb and things like. Take the responsibility and not let it be without any accountability to AI, right? We just don't want to do that. We want to have human involvement. So they were an offshoot of OpenAI. OpenAI was started as a very different company than it wasn't a company, it was a movement really. And with Elon and Sam Altman together, now they're at war, of course. But this was a group of people that worked at OpenAI that thought they weren't being careful enough with the safety around AI. They went off, Dario Amodei and his sister and others. These are all ex-OpenAI people, and they started Anthropic, which was focused more on safety. And this is the way they are. And so they said to the Pentagon, well, and it's also considered by the Pentagon and many others as the best system. So it's really good. And by the way, if you use it, it's better than ChatGPT. It is. I used Claude. I used to use ChatGPT. It's a better product. And the added plus is they don't want to surveil Americans. So they went off and did this, and the safety has always been their biggest thing. Now, not completely. By the way, all these companies have all kinds of hair on them, even Anthropic, all of them.
Well, I was
Nobody's
going to ask,
perfect.
is there a good AI? I mean, is there such thing
It's a
as a
low
good
bar.
AI company in your view?
It's
Okay.
it's a low bar. It's a very low bar. I mean, the thing is, they are committed. The way Apple was committed to privacy, and Apple has genuinely been committed to privacy. A lot of other problems in Apple, China, how they make things in China, et cetera, et cetera. But their commitment to privacy is absolutely in the heart of Apple as a company. Same thing here with Anthropic, safety AI. And so what they said is, we don't want to do this if you want to do this. It should have been bygones, right? We're a capitalist company. We don't like your rules. We're not going to do business with you. Instead, Pete Hegseth, another moron, never ran a business. Let me just make that clear. And he said, you have to do it or else we are going to, besides not letting you just leave, we're going to we're going to kneecap you. We're going to say other companies can't do business with you. We can declare you a supply chain risk, except it's all this stuff you just shouldn't do or can't do. But he's doing it. They will lose in court. The Pentagon. And by the way, guess who's paying for the lawyers for the Pentagon? You and I. Like, for this moron to do this ridiculous case, which they'll lose, which, the same thing with the law firms, the same things, like they're telling law firms how to behave. They're buying a stake in Intel. Why are they picking winners in the computer game? Like, if you're a committed capitalist, this is not capitalism. This is state-sanctioned blackmail, essentially. And so that's what they're doing to Anthropic. Into the breach, OpenAI came and said, we'll do the deal, hands up. He's getting a lot. Right. He's getting a lot of flack.
OpenAI does ChatGPT, for folks who maybe aren't familiar with what the products are. Yeah, ChatGPT. Yeah.
Right. And Anthropic does Claude.
This...
Anthropic does Claude. Gemini is from Google. Everybody has their name for whatever. I prefer Claude because I think it's better.
Claude is so nice to me when I ask Claude questions.
Yeah, they're all the same on some basic level, like search.
Some basic level. Yeah,
everybody, their LLMs are much more of a commodity going forward. But I happen to like
speaking.
Claude.
We really do think about the AI companies being pretty cozy with the Trump administration. Do you think Anthropic's kind of like very public? Like, no, we're just not going to do it that way. I mean,
he called him a
significant
today,
politically?
Dictator style.
Yeah.
I think it's actually good for their brand. They're number one on the App Store right now. Everybody likes it. To me, there's always a lane for being not what the others are doing in any business. Like right now, CBS going right. What a bunch of idiots. Like MS Now's got the whole progressive lane to itself. Give me a break. Like, how dumb could you be to compete with Fox News? But whatever, they're dumb. So that's owned by a big tech family, the Ellisons, who, they're the Ellisons. What do you want?
Yeah.
And so who know nothing about media, let me say. He makes a good movie. He does. The son makes a very nice Mission Impossible. And I appreciate I like Top Gun, Maverick. I did. But
I never saw it.
That's neither here nor there. It's just like, good for you. Stay the hell out of news is my feeling. So what was I getting to? You can just decide which one you want to use here. That's the thing. And that should be, again, with the same idea, is the coziness that they have is in order to help their shareholders. And that's laudable, but it's embarrassing, and they should pay for it. Tim Cook is a very good example. When Alex Preddy was killed, he was at the White House at the Melania screening. That was bad. That looked bad, right? And didn't say anything publicly, this is a company that's always been committed and has been to civil rights in a way that was much more profound than other companies. But there he was in a tuxedo next to a guy who was credibly accused of sexual harassment. It was just too much. Or standing at the inaugural, all of them standing there right in front of Trump, in front of elected officials, in front of cabinet officials. Trump put them there for a reason. They were like dolls on a shelf. Look who I own. I don't fault Trump at all for doing that. Honestly, I think it's grotesque, but it's them. They're the problem. And they were standing there because they wanted, to me, I was like, they wanted to get theirs, and they were going to do whatever it took. And let me finish. It went back to 2016 when they trooped up to Trump Tower when he won, and they were all terribly concerned with immigration issues and the abuse of immigrants. They were. And by the way, immigration made to Silicon Valley, just so you're aware. And many of the CEOs are immigrants. Sergey Brin is an immigrant. Sundar Pichai is an immigrant. Satya Nadella is an immigrant. They're immigrants. This is how they got to this country. That's why we're so great in innovation, because we bring all the smartest minds across the globe here. So they went up to Trump Tower. I actually broke that story, and they had talked about immigration, and Elon went too, and we had a big set to about it at the time, and I write about this in my book, where they go up there, they troop up there, and say to me, all of them said to me, oh, we're going to talk to him about the immigration thing. And I said, he's going to ban Muslims. He said so. They're like, no, once we talk to him, we can talk him down off that shelf. I'm like, you're not going to talk to him off that shelf. He's been a long time racist. Like, I don't quite know where you think. And Elon said, I can convince him. And I said, well, Jesus, good for you, but you're not, because he's 100 years old and he's been a racist most of his life. So, it was an interesting thing. And I actually opened my book with the line, so it was capitalism after all, right? It wasn't about helping us. It wasn't about community. It wasn't about bettering the world. It was about money. And so getting back to this, it's about money. So use yours for power. That's what I say. That's my feeling of everything. Like, you have power you don't know you have.
We have a few more people calling in. I want to try to get to everyone if I can here.
Sure.
We only have about 5 minutes left. We have Lucas in St. Paul. Lucas, what do you want to share?
Yeah, so I have a question about, in terms of taking part in this movement and feeling empowered by it. How do I go about letting these places know, like, my reasons for unsubscribing or not spending? Because I haven't shopped at Target since the DEI thing, but I never wrote to the CEO to say, here's why, So how do I get that level of things?
Yeah, it's interesting. You can't really give a feedback. You can actually at many of some companies. But the good thing about this is when you leave ChatGPT, they ask you why. Like what was, here's a comment, and you say resist and unsubscribe, you son of a bitch. That's what I do on all mine. I did it on the One Medical, which is owned by Amazon. And they said, why are you leaving? They try to keep you. They do everything when you try to it's very hard in many ways to unsubscribe from some of these services, but they ultimately let you do it. Often you have to call in, but in these cases they do it online. And they said, why are you leaving? And I said, because Jeff Bezos sucks, resist and unsubscribe. And that's all he said. So I put the link to the thing. And so explain where you can why you did it. They do pay attention to those things. They have services that do this. They pay a lot of attention. And whether you think you have an impact, more people saying why they're leaving, they absolutely spend a lot of money on that stuff. So do it. Just say why you left. And luckily with these services, streaming services, chat, they'll ask you why, and you need to type it in.
Okay. We have Jesse in Minneapolis on the line. Jesse, really quickly here, what do you want to share with us? We just have a few minutes left.
Yeah, just bouncing off of what you were saying about giving a reason for unsubscribing or something like that. With Target, I did the same. I wrote in. I read several interviews, a town hall with the new CEO. He doesn't seem to get the picture. He just says, we're throwing you the communities 5% of our profits. Like, what's that going to do? That's not going to do anything. They're just out of touch, Is that the truth?
So they aren't in touch. You're right. They don't. They don't have to do anything, but I'm telling you, it does have an impact. I get to talk to these people, and I can tell you it drives them crazy, even if they don't do it publicly. I hear from them a lot, and they're like, "Can't you back off a little bit?" I go, "No, sorry, we're not going to, and we're going to keep doing it," because what it does is it gives people permission in just a different way. Again, you don't have to do it. You can do protesting if you think that's the most effective. But as the guy you had on the beginning, voting is the absolute most important way, because that is. Talk about customer service. That is an indication of customers. We don't like you anymore. You need to leave. And I think that's the most powerful tool that you have. But you have a lot of tools. You can appear at town halls. You can appear at stockholder meetings. You can appear. You have to get up. Like you literally have to get up and do something. And that is the duty of every American citizen. I'm a big capitalist. I've started companies all over the place, and I definitely pay attention to when people call in, and they do too, even if they don't act like it. When you hold them accountable and you say something, it affects them. It does. They can't. If you don't think you do, you're wrong. You absolutely do.
Yeah. Kara, we just have a little bit of time left here.
Sure.
Really quickly, you've been covering tech for so long. You were covering it in the 90s when we were all just waking up to the internet.
Yeah.
Has your views of that industry shifted? And again, we have about a minute left here.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. My book is all about that. It's called Burn Book, A Tech Love Story, which shows you how I feel. It's very mixed, right? I'm very upset because I love technology. I think I just finished a CNN documentary about longevity. There's such amazing things tech is doing to bring better health outcomes for everybody. It's of course being hijacked by rich people, which is nothing new. So I think one of the things that I feel about is technology. I'll end on this. Paul Virilio, I have a quote about technology, was saying, when you invented electricity, you invented the electric chair. When you invented the ship, you invented shipwrecks. We've had far too many shipwrecks and electric chairs. There's so many benefits that tech can bring. We have to demand they stop wrecking ships and they stop making us pay for all their mistakes. They don't care about you. They don't care about you. That is what I have to say. So you have to care enough to do something about it.
Kara Swisher, thank you so much. Kara is the co-host of Pivot podcast. Welcome. We're excited to have you. Safe travels.
We're going to have
safe
some
travels.
Fun. Okay. Thank you.
This conversation was produced by Gabrielle Zuckerman. Have a good evening. We'll talk to you again on Monday.
Support for tonight's program comes from Alight and Northwest Minnesota Foundation, helping create a trusted space where Minnesotans can come together, engage with one another, and better understand the issues shaping our communities. We're grateful for their support of thoughtful civic dialogue and connection. Thanks for being with us tonight.